3, 4, 5, 6. Calling our workshop of City Council to order. And we have all of our City Council members here. And the first item on the workshop is a discussion regarding the code changes submitted by the West Jordan City Attorney's Office. And so, Duncan, we'll turn some time over to you to begin with. And again, from a workshop standpoint, this is kind of an open conversation for our City Council members. So we can have discussions amongst us, discussions with staff as a work session meeting to just get our questions answered and make comments, etc. So let's start with you, Duncan.
Okay, I did place a handout, a copy of each in front of each council member. There is essentially about a 4-page packet. The first page is kind of a summary of the anticipated titles that will be coming to you over the next several months by groups. This being the first group with titles 6, 7, and 9 and some definitions. Just wanted to get that to you so that that you'll be able to see what's coming up next and in what order and so forth. I did receive some calls from individual council members about potential changes. There were no actual substantive changes proposed for the titles 6, 7, and 9, even though there were some discussion items. One of the main discussion items council members had, as I talked to you individually, was just what was the decision-making process for Chief Administrative Officer or Chief Executive Officer. And the thought pattern is that currently the city manager is fulfilling both of those sets of responsibilities. In the future, the Chief Executive Officer will be the mayor. The Chief Administrative Officer will be the city administrator. Of course, the city administrator will be appointed by and under the direction of the mayor, subject to council approval. But the thought was if anything was overarching policy, administrative policy decisions, or affecting the entire city, then those items fit within the realm of Chief Executive Officer. If it was more just day-to-day, lower-level decisions, then those were placed upon the role of Chief Administrative Officer. And so, but apparently nobody had any changes to any of those in those titles. The two sets of changes that I talked about, one set with Councilmember Anderson and one with Councilmember Whitelock, had to do just with the definitions, which you have in front of you. That's the last couple of pages to the handout. Councilmember Anderson noticed that we have the effective date as being January 6, 2020, which is established by statute, the first Monday of the year in January. But the distinction or the nuance that he recognized was it's not till 12 noon on that date. And so what I did is added another definition, which is the change of government effective date, which makes it clear that it's 12 noon on January 6, 2020. And then just change the other definitions to reflect that effective date so that they all refer back to that same time. It'll be kind of interesting, but people will come to work in that morning and their boss will be the city manager, and they'll go to lunch and they'll come back and their boss is the mayor. But just in case something happens that Monday morning, it'll be clear who's in charge or whatever. So that was the first change, and that was Councilmember Anderson's joke, but I'm going to take credit for it. The other change comes with the position of council director, and I've actually lined that one out. There's probably not a need for it. The future council, and that Councilmember Whitelock had mentioned that until the new council decides what staff they want, probably doesn't make sense to start putting names to positions. So at least in this updated draft, those are the two sets of changes that I've made. But are there any other changes or questions or concerns?
So it's free to just jump in if you've got a question. Just jump in there.
No questions, but I got a handful of comments. Are you okay if I
please
take a minute or two? Awesome. I thought it might be a little bit easier if I printed out these in advance, so let me share them real quick, and then I'll
I ask you a quick question while you're doing that? Just not to butt in line, but just because it's really quick. Is that okay?
Now that I'm back?
Now that
Okay.
you're, yeah, now that you're done. You could have nodded. For
Oh,
that.
Duncan, I don't think they're through
I'll
with
wait.
you yet.
I'll wait, you're good.
Okay, so couple things. First one, with definitions, I also saw an issue with council director. It almost, the way it read, it sounded as if the city council was subordinate to the council director, but if that whole thing's being removed, then it's irrelevant. Public safety, Title VI. This isn't directly related to the change, but it's very, very quick and to the point. There's a section in there that talks about pet turtles being illegal. Every pet shop in West Jordan I called sells them. They run right about $24.95. Wondering if there's any reason for this to be here or if it should be stricken while we're at it. If there's a reason for it, great. But when this comes back to council for approval, if there's no need for this, I would suggest either A, we enforce it, or B, my real preference, delete this line. I didn't have any concern with Title VII with motor vehicles and traffic. Then in utilities, there were a few items. The first one that I want to hit on is actually on page 2 of my written comments. If you go, this is section 9-5-4, backflow prevention and cross-connection control. I didn't print one for the entire council, no. So the question on here is, I know we had the issue not too long ago where we had cross-contamination issues, so backflow is kind of on people's minds. The recommendation that we add a line to code saying all commercial and industrial facilities are required to provide a report to the city backflow administrator detailing the location of each backflow prevention device, and then keeping us advised if there's any change within 10 days, and also that commercial and industrial facilities need to have a certified past report in order to receive their C of O. Just a thought to add in there. It seems very, very quick, very easy, and if that's something that we can slip in as we're doing this, it seems appropriate. The ones that I had policy questions on, this is 9-3-4, administration and establishment of regulations. This is on page 15 of the electronic version that the city council received. It reads, the city manager, which is now going to be chief executive officer, may establish reasonable regulations and procedures sufficient to provide for the efficient handling of such claims and disbursement of appropriate funds for payment of claims under the provisions and limitations of this chapter. My question is if that should be the city council is establishing those provisions, or if that's really something that falls under the mayor.
And so this is which section that you're referring to?
9-3-4, under the header, administration and establishment of regulations.
Yeah, so my understanding of what this one refers to is after the council has set all of the main policies by ordinance and so forth, then even currently under the current form of government, the city manager can establish what are called administrative directives to carry out that policy. Then in the future, the mayor would have that same authority. And then the chief executive officer obviously refers to the city manager now or mayor in the future. It's more just to implement and carry out whatever the council has already put in place. Obviously, he can't do anything to supersede the council, but implement.
Okay, it just raised a little concern where it said this chief executive officer may establish reasonable regulations.
We could add the words consistent with city code.
Okay,
Okay.
that would make me happier.
I would actually like to see if that would say consistent with city ordinances and resolutions passed by the council, because not everything that we do as direction for the chief executive is code per se.
Right, yeah.
So ordinances and resolutions might be a little more.
Okay.
Next up, this is page 18 of the electronic at the top of the page where it says budget expenditures. This is 9-3-11. Budget expenditures, specifically regarding the water and sewer no-fault fund. It says the chief administrative officer is authorized to establish a water and sewer utility enterprise no-fault loss account within the risk management fund to be funded from water and sanitary sewer rates. Appropriations will be made through the regular budget process, including adoption of utility fee and rate increases to fund this program. As I read that, it sounds like the mayor would be given the authority to create that fund or establish funding for that fund, not necessarily specifically getting authorization for expenditures through the city council. I thought it might be appropriate to call out that maybe this should be included as a line item that's approved by the city council.
Yeah, I think certainly that's the intent, and you're right, there appears to be some missing language, and maybe like at the end it could say including recommendations for the adoption of utility rate increases or something along those lines. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
That, yeah, okay.
Mayor, excuse me, council member, could I interject something? This may be helpful to your comments, Councilman. You're going to find over the next 5 months that there are dozens, if not hundreds of places in the code where you're going to want to limit the authority of the mayor or the city administrator to be consistent with the city code and state law. So I would suggest, unless you want to have a 2,000-page code, that we in the administrative title make it clear that any of the authority that the mayor or city administrator exercises must be consistent with other provisions of the code and within the parameters of the budget. Otherwise, we're going to be repeating ourselves over and over and over. It's a great comment, and it absolutely is the law, but I'd suggest we consolidate it there so we don't lengthen the code more than it needs to be.
That would be fine with me. It's just in this one spot, however, where it seemed to, contrary to the rest of the code, it seemed like it was giving authority to the mayor in this one scenario to determine what the budget would be, irrespective of council, as long as it could be paid for with utility rates. And I think that this is one that we want to know what's happening with that risk fund.
And if I can just point out, that does say Chief Administrative Officer, not Chief Executive Officer.
Yeah, thank you.
So, okay.
And then the last, second to last one, 989. This is on page 49 of the electronic version. I'm gonna jump down there. So 989, risk manager approval. Again, this is the stormwater remediation payments.
Right.
It says the risk manager is authorized to offer up to the maximum amount allowable under that program. Substantiated basically any claim that exceeds that settlement authority, the risk manager must receive prior written authorization from the chief executive officer, so from the mayor, to offer additional funds. If the mayor is going to go above what is allowed by city code, there should also be something here that at a minimum requires the mayor to advise the city council. I mean, if there's funding there and it's appropriate, great. Maybe the city council doesn't necessarily need to approve, but the city council needs to be aware that there's an exception to what's authorized explicitly under code. This part had me kind of scratching my head a bit. I know it's there right now.
Yeah, that's got me scratching my head about why it's there right now, because can the city manager do that now?
The city manager has
above
always,
and beyond?
the city manager has a signing limit that coincides with the maximum amount of that fund. So we still have the ability, well, the city manager still has to come to the council to talk if there's gonna be anything offered above that, and that's what we've seen in the past. But if signing authorities change, the council needs to be kept in the loop because, I would be most comfortable if any amount is authorized by both the mayor and brought to the city council for approval.
Right, because
Okay.
the council still holds the purse string in that form of
Yeah.
government.
Then, the last item, this is on page 50 of the electronic version, 9813. And my question here, this is the appeal process. If somebody, paragraph B, if somebody appeals a decision that's been made, and I believe this is this is referenced in a few different places, but primarily with emphasis on that remediation fund. If there's an appeal made, the appellant can go back to the chief executive officer and the chief administrative officer, and the chief executive officer may authorize an assistant chief administrative officer to sit on the appeal board. I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to include a member of the city council, likely the council chair, as a member of that appeal board. Since it is a council policy, it would seem appropriate to have one member of the council to sit in on that appeal as a member of that board. fact, it seems a good balance. If the council creates the policy, the mayor executes it, the mayor has 2 people on that, the council has 1, the mayor still has a little extra weight there.
Councilmember McConaughey. Sorry, I'm getting a low voice. Would it be appropriate maybe to include the council chair and possibly or vice chair so that there may be an alternate there? Or
I would just say representative of the city council.
Okay.
And the council can pick, because maybe that's something that should be the council chair, or maybe they want to rotate through, kind of like the employee discharge appeal board, have it as an assignment like that. So rather than hamstring them and say, this is exactly how it will be, leave it open, but just make sure that one of those seats on the appeal board is filled by a member of the city council.
Okay.
Those are my thoughts. You've got that in writing. I would, and again, I'm just one of 7. But if there's no objection, I would like to see those included with the next revision that comes back for passage. I didn't see anything else that concerned me.
Any further discussions on this item regarding the titles 1, 6, 7, and 9?
I did have one quick question, and now I'm going back to remember what that was. Had to do with the council director. Oh, I remember. When we started, I don't want to say fiddling with, because that trivializes it. When we started making changes to the code, it started when we changed the title of, we made community preservation manager and assistant city manager. We kind of shuffled that around with the idea that one of those roles, I think, now remind me of the changes that we made and the thought process behind that, because I think, wasn't one of those roles going to become like the city manager, like the city council director as was in here?
Yeah, at least in the presentation that was given by Mr. Bricky and myself back on February 28th last year was that there could be a potential for up to 2 assistant city managers, and that one of those assistant city managers could become a council director. Obviously, you're not locked into that. That was at least one possibility. And I think the major point of that discussion was that the change of government does not automatically necessitate any additional increase in expense. And so that discussion was about how one of those positions, if you decided to have a full-time council director, could be funded by shifting over one of those assistant city manager positions.
Okay, so the intent was not necessarily then to have a person who is in that role, one of those roles currently.
No, but it just
shift.
Yeah, it wouldn't necessarily mean a specific person shifting. It just was to identify where the funding was coming from.
Okay, all right.
Right.
I recalled something about that. I wanted to clarify that as we had this council director position in here and then didn't. Wanted to double check and see where we were on that. Thank you.
You bet. And then, Mayor, the way that this, and members of the council, the way that that cover sheet indicates that we're looking at coming back to the council on those particular dates that are listed. The thought we had is that you could review each group of ordinances on one date and then approve them perhaps on the next date. This set we've scheduled for your next meeting on January 23rd. So I guess the direction I'm looking for is, what would you like me to bring back on January 23rd at your next meeting?
Well, I think if you could come back with those changes, if we could see the changes ahead of time,
Okay.
to make sure that we've got everything incorporated in that we're asked for tonight, and then come back with a resolution to approve those on the 23rd.
Okay.
And kind of make the same process as we go through the rest of these on these dates that you have shown.
Okay,
Is that
so-
the way everybody?
Well, let
look
me
at the
ask,
same
if we get those changes, we see some things we want to change, can we still make another change between these 2 dates and then still vote on it on the next meeting?
As long as they have time to do it and get it in there so that they can make those adjustments.
We actually do that all the time, right? When an ordinance is proposed with changes to code, and we say, well, we like this, but we want to strike out this line and add this word, and do that. We do that all the time on the fly. I think we can do that if there's other minor tweaks we want to make on that date.
And I think that's fine too. We just need to make sure that we do the best we can to hold to the schedules here, so that if we can keep the ball rolling exactly on this. So
right.
we've got the dates down here, so
Okay, so I'll put together the proposed ordinance then, and we'll try to have that out by the end of the week so that everybody will have enough time to look that over well in advance of your next meeting. Okay.
Mayor, if,
yes.
it's me with the low voice. The bass. I just think, I just want to mention, I think it's very critical that we stay with this timeline. There's already a couple people that have announced candidacy for seats. And some of this is going to not affect them, but as people decide whether they want to run or not for different offices, as we have this change in form of government coming, I just think that these dates that Duncan has set are, I'm going to call it time sensitive, and I think we need to kind of stick to this schedule would be my recommendation.
And I
And it
think
looks
if,
like-
oh, I'm sorry.
go
Mike.
ahead.
I think what you're mentioning then, Councilmember Anderson, is that Title I in particular sets forth the exact duties of the mayor and council members, and that's scheduled to be completed by the end of March, and then the filing period for those positions is the first week or two of June. So you're saying that there would be some, at least people would know what they're filing for, so to speak, is that right? Okay.
Can I make a request? If a council member wants to bring those, I think those changes are good, Chris, but it would have been nice to either have it in electronic form or written form. So if we're gonna do that, if we'll provide it for all of us. Thank you.
One other thing I'd like to see, maybe on our timeline moved up, going along with what Councilmember Anderson just said about campaigning, sign regulations is on here, but not until September and October. If we're gonna make changes to sign regulations, maybe we want to do that before campaigns kick off, especially as it may or may not affect campaign signs, which are everyone's favorite topic. I would suggest moving Title 12 up to before June 1st.
Mayor, that would probably not be a bad idea, just because I think you'll probably had a lot of discussion about it, but I can tell you the changes that will be proposed to the sign ordinance will have nothing to do with campaign signs. Campaign signs are pretty clear as what you can and can't do, but we do have some
That's what
other
you
issues.
think.
I've been through it for 35 years.
I
Cities may apply it differently, but the law is pretty clear.
Right, but every city's ordinances are a little different. I don't
They're
know
not
if
going to
you've-
be now.
I don't know if you've noticed, but, yeah,
That's
so,
it's probably a good suggestion because it is a difficult
right.
code when it comes to off-premise signs and on-premise signs. So, council member, I would like to see us do
I
that
just
too.
know when I drive through Draper during campaign season, I see lots bigger signs than I see in West Jordan during campaign season. Not saying it's right or wrong, not saying one's better or worse, I'm just saying it's different.
You're just respectful of the environment.
Yeah, that's what we do. We're just cheap.
Okay, any more discussion on workshop item A? Okay, we'll go to item B, discussion regarding use of city facilities by the Cultural Arts Society of West Jordan, Corbin Lee.
Thank you, Council. As you know, the Cultural Arts Society of West Jordan has recently become an independent 501c3. As such, there's a number of things we need to do to kind of formalize our relationship with them. One of the big things is to establish a facility use agreement or a lease agreement for their use of City Hall, the 1962 building, Pioneer Hall, and so on. I can go through the history of what they have used in the past or what they plan to use, but essentially I think you're aware. For the most part, they would like to keep using the Shore Gallery and the community room for rehearsal space for both the band, symphony, and theater and youth theater at times. They'd like to use the 1962 building for meeting space and construction of sets and a little bit of storage. They currently use 3 shipping containers for storage that are near the 1962 building. And they've historically used the Pioneer Hall for performances about twice a year, 4 weeks each time per year. Lastly, they have taken advantage of the city's agreement with the Salt Lake County Library System to use the Veridian Center for performances by the band and the symphony, as the city has use of that facility for a certain number of days, we've allowed our use of that, or our right to use that building to be for their performances.
Since this is kind of an
I need
open
to-
discussion, I think we have a question, and I think
Yeah,
we
I
can
need a
just jump
sense
in
from
and-
you as to where you want to go with this.
Yeah, so,
Can you clarify the 1962 building? I'm not sure of one reference.
oh, that's the old facilities building over here, Sugar Factory.
Oh, so it's just storage is all they have there.
Yeah.
The one kind of out behind the rodeo arena that's just
You know, that little white building that sits over
kind of
there,
up on
the
blocks? Okay.
masonry building. So, keep going if you got more, Corbin, I guess.
Let me see. Nope, that's it. So the most critical one right now is City Hall. But all of those we'd like to lump into one agreement, defining, here's your defined use, here's the time frame, here's your process to access that facility use. Here's what you agree to, and so on. What I need is at least some basic direction from the council, so that as staff, we can start drafting an agreement, and then we can bring that agreement back to you. And hopefully it reflects at least the general direction the council's given us.
Well, as I've expressed my feelings before regarding the Pioneer Hall, that building's 160 years old, and I worry about if we keep using it in the way we're using it, that building is not going to last like it should. And that's the one building I'm really concerned about, how much we actually continue to use that building. So I just throw that out there as part of the discussion tonight. So others want to chime in, so go ahead.
If I might chime in for a second. First of all, on that building, as soon as we get the new building, that will go away. So I say let them use it up until that time. But something that Corbin brought up, which I thought of when he mentioned the Viridian, because they've been using the city name to reserve it, and we have some reservations there. They've also been using the city name to reserve, like Joel P. Jensen. And now the school district wants to charge them because they're not the city to do that. So if we're able to do the same thing for the Viridian and do the same thing with the school district when we make that in there, I think that would be helpful.
We just heard today that the Jordan School District will allow them the governmental rate for the use of Joel P. Jensen Middle School Auditorium. So that's not an issue. But the Viridian is because the agreement, as I understand it, is between the city and the county. And so we need to, if we want them to still use the Viridian Center under our agreement, we need to designate that and make sure the county is okay with that.
So basically, we would reserve it, rent it, and they would rent it through us.
Or, they would, use it on our designated day,
So I have a question. Is it ever a problem for them to use this building and those rooms? Is that ever a conflict, really? I mean, is it at night?
I can only give you some experience.
That's what I'm asking for, because to me, it doesn't seem like it would be, but.
Well, historically in the past, when they've had practices here especially, where the parents bring their children, and the parents are busy in their rehearsals, the children are running through the building, and we've had water fountains torn off the wall. We've had so many things stuffed in a toilet that the toilet plugs up, and they flush it until it overflows. Those kinds of things happen in this building. And so we just need to be aware that that's what could still happen.
Okay. But as far as conflicts, because we kind of leave by 5, 6 o'clock most
So
days.
in the past, we've seen times where they want to have rehearsal downstairs, but we're up here in council meeting, or you have planning commission going on. Open meeting laws require that the doors literally remain open, so we get the sound going back and forth. We've had times where folks have rehearsed up here in council chambers, and things haven't necessarily been put back the way they should have been. And we do have issues with that podium mic, and it seems like every time that gets moved, we have issues with the microphone system. So there are some logistical concerns, but it's not like every single night's going to be a conflict. There's some availability.
Okay. My other comment would be, that's great that they'll let them use Joel P., but it'd sure be nice if we could negotiate with them to let them use the new West Jordan Middle, because have you ever been in Joel P., Corbin?
I have not.
it's a pit. It's not an auditorium. It's a terrible pit
I'm familiar with the building designs and have been in their identical buildings.
on the east side.
yeah.
Yeah,
They
so
are very willing. They are very willing as well to let us use West Jordan Middle.
that would be great if we could
The
make.
conversations I've had
okay.
with Scott Thomas and those
Yeah.
over there, they are very willing to, they took us through this and let us look at it.
It's a pretty nice building, isn't it?
It's got a wonderful theater in there.
Mayor?
Huh?
Based on the time, I'm not sure if this needs to be a motion since it's a workshop, but my recommendation would be we circle back to this part of the conversation, but jump ahead to the scheduled redevelopment agency meeting that's slated for 6 o'clock, and then proceed with the agenda through the Pledge of Allegiance, the State of the City address, and then through the presentations. And then after the presentations, come back and pick up the conversation about the.
Come back into the work. We can suspend the work study meeting, the work session.
Yes.
Go through these other, and come back to the work session meeting.
Yes.
Is everybody in favor of doing that? Are you okay with doing that?
If we have citizens here that are here to. Do we want to go through the citizen, not the communications, but the citizen
Me
comment?
too. Yes, absolutely. If
Okay.
people have come here specifically to make a comment, I would rather hear from them and not make them wait for an hour to speak. So I would.
Then I'm
yeah,
good.
Communication moves after citizen comments. We proceed with the meeting as agendized through citizen comments.
With that, then I will suspend the workshop meeting and open the redevelopment agency meeting, and I'll call that to order. The first item of business is a public hearing. Receive public comments only regarding amendments to EDA number 4 and fiscal year 2018-19 for the redevelopment agency. Kent Anderson.
Thank you, Board Chair, board members. I'm pleased to have reached this point for this project. This is takes a lot of steps and a lot of time, a lot of investment from a lot of different individuals. In participation and present tonight, we have Don McDaniel, a representative of PayPal, Frank Birchie from Aligned Energy. We have Adam Long, our agency legal counsel. And I want to take just a moment to give a special thanks to the staff that spent a lot of time and a lot of meetings on this. Paul Coates with the original purchase of Aligned Energy, by Aligned Energy, and then bringing in PayPal, Jeremy Olson through the process, Jared Tingey through helping out with some of the legal items, and then again, Adam Long. This is a proposed budget amendment for EDA number 4, known as the Fairchild project area. Little background on the project. This area is located at 3333 West, 9,000 South. It's approximately 60 acres and 290,000 square feet. Zoned light manufacturing, or M1, opened in 1974. EDA number 4 was originally created to help the modernization of the plant in 2010. However, Fairchild never drew any increment to proceed with that modernization. In fact, ceased to occupy the building. And so since late 2014, that building has been vacant. Enter Aligned Energy. First, the redevelopment agency acquired the property in November of 2017, with Aligned Energy purchasing the property just this last year in March. The building has been converted from a semiconductor facility to a data center, which is a permitted use in the M1. The redevelopment agency entered into an interlocal agreement with the City of West Jordan and a subsequent agreement with Aligned Energy for a partial rebate of municipal energy taxes, totaling not to exceed $5 million over a 10-year period. This is a little idea of some of the site work. It's a lot different than I would take in these pictures when I was originally doing these presentations. These generators are in, walls around, etc. Something unique about Aligned Energy is, in comparison to other co-location data centers, is their patented cooling system. This was something that was very specific of interest to the Salt Lake County during the taxing entity process. They use up to 85% less water and 80% less energy compared to typical co-location data centers. They've partnered with Rocky Mountain Power to offer sustainable energy options and plan to use 100% renewable by 2021. So specific to the budget amendment request, and I apologize for those that may have heard this joke, but I can't help but use it. It was originally known as Project Pepper River, and this was known for a long time. And I thought project names are always kind of interesting. This one I thought was a little bit more unique. When you think of Pepper River, you have the Salt Lake, and so you've got that tie there. So I apologize again if you've heard that one again. I did find that creative. I look at PayPal as the anchor tenant for Aligned Energy and will spur and solidify the development by Aligned Energy. The total projected investment by PayPal is $663 million over a 10-year period. The agreement, and this is very specific, is that it's a 10-year rebate of personal property taxes only, specific only to PayPal. There's another tenant that goes into Aligned Energy. This does not affect that, and they would not be eligible for any of the incentives discussed in here. Aligned Energy wouldn't be eligible for any of these participations. So just a little bit of context that it's specific to personal property, so essentially the servers that PayPal would be putting into the facility. The budget is 60% of the new incremental revenue will come to the agency, with 40% being paid out to the taxing entities. So as a point of clarification, the agency will actually receive 100% of all of the personal property taxes paid by PayPal, and then the agency will rebate 40% of that back to the taxing entities. And I have a slide that will show you the amount of those projected revenues. Budget includes 10% for housing, 3% for administration. The agency budget is capped at $6.8 million. So once $6.8 million is reached, or 10 years is reached, the project area will cease to exist under this form. The anticipated trigger year is this year. On December 10th, 2018, the Taxing Entity Committee unanimously approved the EDA number 4 budget amendment. I did think about that. We had a project area that was proposed not too long ago, and this was the first project area that we've gone and met with our taxing entities committees, and I was interested in the percent of participation to the total private investment, so public investment versus private investment. For this project, it's very favorable, and it was recognized by just about every single of the taxing entities. This public investment represents 1% of the total project cost. To provide a little bit of context, the Merit Medical project that was just approved was 7.5%, and the proposed City of West Jordan Facebook participation was 12.5%. So when you look at the range, this is a very favorable when compared to other proposals. In terms of budget, now these totals represent a 10-year total. So it's not 1 year, it's 10 years. 60% to the agency, if you look at the bottom, would be 6.7, so again, why we've capped it at 6.8. 40% to the other taxing entities. So this recognizes money that the Jordan School District will receive, the City of West Jordan will receive. Again, you see City of West Jordan there on the bottom, $784,000 over a 10-year period, with the total increment, or the total increment being created of $11.2 million. Can I answer any questions?
Questions from council members? Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. So, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Your information was very helpful, and I think this project's looking really good. The question I have is the previous people that were in there who did manufacturing used a great deal of water. So, do we know that the new building, are they going to be using as much, or will they be using less water?
Regarding the actual water uses compared to Fairchild, I don't. I know the discharge is significantly less into the sewer system. We were able to receive that information today.
Okay, so the lines leaving the place would be plenty adequate because they'll be putting less into there.
Absolutely. And again, it's hard to project the new usage as there are no tenants in there currently operating.
That's a good point. I was just reflecting on the slide that showed how they are conserving water, but it doesn't say what the quantities would be.
Right. And again, that comparison was comparing to other similar co-location facilities.
Right, not the previous one, but other data centers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Board Member Jacob.
Thank you, Chairman. Ken, if you'd back up one slide for me. When it says 60% to agency, explain the mechanics, because that makes it sound like it's coming back to the redevelopment agency.
Right.
And so just let's explain what happens to that money and where it goes. So
the proposal would be to have the agency receive 60% of all the tax increment generated. From that point, per the proposed agreement, 87% of that 60% would be rebated back to PayPal. 10% would be retained for housing, for agency activities in any of our redevelopment areas, and 3% for the administration. So essentially 13% will remain in agency coffers, 87% would go out as a participation with PayPal.
Okay, so PayPal would be getting essentially 52% back of what they'd be paying.
That's correct.
67 or?
It's about 5.9 million.
Yep, okay. That's what I wanted to know. And just something that I'd like to mention as a comment, what a lot of people don't understand what personal property tax is on a business. And it's really hard to understand because as people, and this is something I've dealt with in my professional life as well, people don't pay personal property tax every year. We pay real property tax every year on our homes, but that's it, and our cars, and that's it. But imagine if you had to take everything in your house, add up the value of that every year, and then pay a percentage tax on that property every year. So you'd have to count up your couches, your computers, your televisions, your iPhones, your everything. And you calculate that up, and then you have to pay a tax on that every year, a property tax on that, like you do on your car. That's what a personal property tax is on a business. So I run a hot tub store. Every year we've got to add up how many hot tubs we have in the store, what they're all worth, pool tables, chemicals, filters, all the stuff that we have, and we have to add that all up, report it to the government, and write them a check every year. That's what tangible personal property tax is. And frankly, many states have outlawed that, by the way. They don't collect it anymore. There's a push to do so in Utah too. It's not gained any traction yet, but I'm sure it will eventually. So just want to make it clear, this is not the property tax on the building. This is not the property tax on the parking lot, the land that's behind the building, all of that. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about that extra tax they have to pay every year on the stuff that's inside the building. A lot of people don't understand that, and there's been a lot of clamor about this, saying, why are you giving tax breaks back to these businesses on things like this? Can I get a tax break on my business? Well, your business probably, if you're a home-based business, you probably don't pay that anyway. So just to clarify for understanding.
Any further questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you. I will open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this item in the public, please come to the lectern. You'll have 3 minutes. Please identify contact information so someone can get back to you if you have questions.
I have to admit, this is my first time here. This is a little bit daunting. There's a lot of people here. It's a lot bigger than I expected, so hopefully I don't see anything that's silly. My name is Jonathan Rogers, as in Mr. I'm wearing a cardigan. Hopefully that will resonate with people here. But we had the opportunity to meet with a couple of the council members on Monday, and Councilman Dirk was kind enough to present these slides that have been eloquently presented for today. What came from that meeting, and I don't see the timer going, so I presume that you'll just let me know, is that I know that this vote is for the $6.8 million in tax rebates on personal property. What's already been said is that the company, PayPal, will spur and solidify the development of that area. We were not really told a lot about this development, and the thing that really kind of struck an accord was actually when council member Kayleen mentioned that we as residents will be impacted, but we should kind of suck it up. And I didn't really like that very much, and that's paraphrasing her words, but in effect that's exactly what she said, and she related that to living next to Bangerter Highway and that she sucked it up as a person, so we should too. What I will say is that I think that voting against this will be the right way to go, at least at this point, to start a environmental and economical impact to the communities that are directly adjacent to this area. I had presented some different case studies of like-for-like data centers in Plano, Texas, in Chandler, Arizona, and in Ashburn, Virginia, where Aligned Energy is also, as well as some papers from different professors actually, on the economic impact for stuff like this. When we asked the council members what studies have been done. They actually kind of looked at us like deer in the headlights. We asked them what studies had been done in terms of the wastewater. That was something that was mentioned today, but again, where's the data? What is the requirement for the company to landscape to hide this development that's going to be coming south? There was no response. What about the noise and sound, air pollution that's coming from these diesel generators? And the comment from Councilman Anderson was there's a city ordinance in place for us to change out our heaters and our vents, and correct me, it's a low emission something.
Tier 4.
Tier 4,
EPA.
there you go, yeah. But again, nothing was really shared with us about how that's really going to impact the communities, and I think the human element is what's missing here. As a resident, as somebody that elects the officials, my personal vote is no on this, and I just hope that there's enough people here that realize that the human element's not been included in this, and this has strictly been an economical decision. Slowing this down, providing that data and doing the studies, and then looking at this as an incentive, I think that would be the right way to go. That's my opinion, and I appreciate the time for letting me come here and express that, so thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to address this issue, please come forward.
My name's Steve Van Maren. I filled out a form, put it in the wire basket over 20 minutes ago. So I'm a resident of Sandy. I appreciate you. I may not have much to say to you as a resident of Sandy, but I kind of look at things from time to time. This one came to my attention because it went to the county council, which I monitor. I'm for the budget, the split, the allocation. This looks fine. It's reasonable. Net impact to West Jordan City is 1.1 million on the slide. That's how much you have to suck up, I guess. It just goes elsewhere. But I don't like the plan. The area plan is dated 2010. The content is irrelevant to today. It doesn't make any sense. That's not how it's going to be used. So why didn't you rewrite the plan? Okay? That's item one. Item two of my disagreement is, I know these numbers are just estimates, but over time, the equipment is going to cost more, and there's going to be less of it. So I don't know how that integrates. And also the tax rates are likely to fall unless an entity raises their tax. Truth in taxation is just going to fall as everything else goes up. So I'm not sure your budget's going to last that long, and I'm concerned that you're really planning to extend this another few years after the 10 to get up to the 6.8 million. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address this issue? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and move to business items. 3A, approve the minutes of December 12, 2018 as presented. Councilmember McConaughey.
You're first. Thank you. I have some more discussion on this other one, if we may. On our public.
Okay.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions. One of them from the comments that were just made, and I don't know if Mr. Anderson's right one, but can you tell me about the area plan that he was referring to? Can you answer to that?
So working? There we go. The project area plan, as mentioned, was originally adopted in 2010. Those plans are used to establish the project area, and then the budget will drive the administration of how the funds will be utilized. And so in this case, staff through legal counsel recognized an amendment to the plan was not necessary, just an amendment to the budget and a participation agreement that reflects that budget.
So this plan was created for Fairchild in 2010 for their expansion of their new equipment?
For the modernization of the plan, correct.
And so we just converted it over to this without closing that plan and starting a new plan?
The plan itself, the budget has been modified, or is being proposed to be modified.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so now we'll move to business item 3A, approve the minutes of December 12th. Board Member McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't believe we have a resolution number for this, correct? Regardless, I move to approve the minutes of December 12th, 2018 as presented.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Board Member Burton,
Yes.
Chair Writing,
Yes.
Board Member Jacob,
Yes?
Board Member McConaughey,
Aye.
Board Member Whitelock,
Yes.
Board Member Lamb,
Yes.
and Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Vote passes 7-0.
Business item 3B, discussion and possible action regarding resolution number 211, adopting the amended project area budget for the Fairchild Economic Development Project Area EDA 4. Kent Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. This presentation essentially covered what is being proposed for resolution number 211. So staff recommends approval of resolution 211, authorizing approval of the project area budget amendment for economic development project area number 4, Fairchild. Any questions?
Questions for staff? Board Member Anderson.
Just a quick question. It might be Rob Wall, but or Adam. So when Aligned Energy outfit the building with new equipment, the old generators were removed off-site. The new EPA Tier 4 generators replaced those, so it's a cleaner. I read the Tier 4 in response to what Jonathan had mentioned, and we don't, as a city, we don't regulate air particulates. We don't regulate noise. The county regulates the noise, and the state regulates the pollutants and emissions from those. But they're required to meet current environmental regulations with Tier 4. Is that a reasonable assumption? Okay, so nodding affirmatively. So the water is what Fairchild was using. This is putting less, as our understanding. The generators have been replaced with EPA Tier 4 standards, which are the highest standards current nationally. I guess those are just my questions, maybe to respond to Mr. Jonathan's comments.
Yeah, I am not aware of what the existing generators were on the facility, though, but according to Aligned Energy, each generator has been deemed by the Utah Department of Air Quality as best available control technology using the Tier 4 engines, which have the lowest emission of diesel engines on the market. Regarding discharge, we did speak with South Valley Water Reclamation, and they mentioned that Fairchild would discharge at a peak 500,000 gallons a day. And their comment is that Aligned Energy will discharge significantly less.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thanks, Mayor.
Board Member Whitelock.
I just have a comment. Councilmember Burton had a town hall, which I chose to attend. Those were not the words I used, but I did compare it to Bangerter Highway. That is true. In explaining to Jonathan that other things could go in there, and I hope that you've heard your questions answered. There were 3 men in attendance at that town hall, and I was very clear on Jonathan's feeling, and I inquired of the other 2, and the other 2 are in favor of this. And I just wanted that to be part of the record.
Board Member Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to be a little bit clear so that people understand what we're deciding here. What we are deciding here is purely a financial decision. It is It's a question, and I mentioned this a couple of years ago when we dealt with a similar usage of a similar kind of incentive thing, but not nearly as advantageous for the city as this one is, at least participation percentage-wise. And that is, we're not debating whether a data center should go here. It's already allowed in the zone. It's already permitted. It's already there. Aligned Energy is a data center, Aligned, right? As a data center provider, that's what they do. It's already there. It's already a data center. It's going to be a data center. Somebody's going to be in there with servers and with those generators and with those whatevers. It's going to be there. Who's it going to be? At this point, PayPal's on the doorstep. They're knocking on the door saying, we'd like to come in, but for us to come in, we'd like you to do this for us. And that's what we're deciding here. We're not deciding whether it is already a data center, because it already is. We're not deciding the use of the building. We're not deciding whether there should be generators on the outside of the building. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is purely a dollars and cents question. And it's, do we want to accept, and this is of an increment, by the way. I don't know if we've covered what an increment is, but an increment is their property taxes are already here on this, whatever the property is that's in there that we're talking about, and they're gonna move it up to here. And so we can either stay here and collect what we've always collected, or we can take a piece of this other chunk that's called the increment. And we're gonna take 40% of that, and that's gonna go to the school district and to the city and to the county and to everybody else. That's the part we're talking about. We're not talking about giving money away that the city's collecting now that's gonna reduce the city budget by $1.17 million or whatever it's gonna be. That's not what we're talking about. We're not giving money away that the city would otherwise have to spend on something else. That's not the issue. These tax incentives are largely misunderstood. And in a perfect world, there wouldn't be any. I agree. In a perfect world, a company would come in and would pay all the taxes they owe, and so would you and so would I, and everybody'd be happy. But right now, that's not how the world is working. If we don't offer this incentive, somebody else will. Maybe a town in Utah County, for example, will offer the right incentive package, and they'll locate there. And then they'll get the $784,000 that we're not gonna get when they go there. So what I'm saying is this is really a good deal for the city. We're coming out ahead. It's capped. We know exactly how much it's gonna cost in quotation marks. It's defined. It's only on this tangible personal property that we already talked about, and it's only on that increment above what's already being paid, which is nothing, by the way. So it's not a free gift. They still have to pay all their taxes and meet all their benchmarks before they get any of that money back. It's really a good thing for the city. I'm firmly in support. Thank you.
Board Member McConaughey.
Thank you, Chair. I think some of the comments that have been made up here underscore comments that were made during the public hearing, specifically about the human element being missed. I think he was right about that. I think that there are better ways that this could have been approached to help articulate the impact that it does have on the citizens, on the community, and on the city. I think if we had looked at this a little bit different and compiled information in a little bit different manner, instead of making it so black and white and so number focused, we could have helped draw some clarity to the quality of life areas that this will have a significant impact. I also think it would have been helpful had we called out some of those known ambiguities and the numbers as their estimates and some of the known unknowns. I think we could have called some of that out a little bit more clearly for folks to understand. That said, having spent going on 8 years now on the city council and having had plenty of time and opportunity to see how this project intertwines with the other elements of city administration, this is a very substantial, significant item for the city, and it really is a beneficial agreement that helps both of us move forward. That being said, I would move to approve Resolution 211, authorizing the approval of the project area budget for the EDA number 4.
Board Member Lamb?
Second.
We have a motion by Board Member McConaughey and a second by Board Member Lamb. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Jacob,
Yes.
Chair Writing,
Yes.
Board Member Lamb,
Yes.
Board Member Burton,
Aye.
Board Member Whitelock,
Yes.
and Board Member McConaughey.
Aye.
The vote passes 7-0.
Business item 3C, discussion and possible action regarding resolution number 212, authorizing the chair to execute a participation agreement for the Fairchild Economic Development Project Area, EDA 4. Kent Anderson.
Again, kind of continuation of the presentation and the next step from the budget approval. There was a modification to the agreement that was sent out to the board regarding a couple of items that were missed. It's been inserted into the packet. It was page 2 and 3 of the agreement regarding the cap. So when this was originally set up, we negotiated the agreement and then went through the taxing entity committee process. There were some modifications through that process, which then resulted into some changes into the agreement. Essentially, it was a $6.82 million originally. That's been revised to $6.8 million. The participation was 85%, revised to 87%. The administration from 5% to 3%. Staff recommends approval of resolution number 212.
Questions? Board Member McConaughey.
Thank you, Chair. Those modifications that you mentioned, when a motion is made, do those have to be called out specifically?
I'll point to Deputy Clerk Brooks. It's been included in the packet, correct?
I put a hard copy of what you emailed today on each of their dice.
To be safe, I would
So,
recommend.
To be safe, then, I would move to approve resolution 212 as provided in paper format to the council, authorizing the chair of the redevelopment board to sign a participation agreement with PayPal for the operation of the data center facility located in Economic Development Project Area number 4.
Board Member Anderson.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Board Member McConaughey and a second by Board Member Anderson. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Board Member Whitelock,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member McConaughey, Board Member Jacob,
Yes.
Board Member Lamb,
Yes.
Chair Writing,
Yes.
and Board Member Burton.
Aye.
Vote passes 7-0.
Chair,
Board Member McConaughey.
I move to adjourn the redevelopment agency meeting and convene city council meeting.
Board Member Burton.
Second.
All in favor? Say aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. We will now open our city council meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Duncan Murray.
Could the audience please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the next item of business on our agenda tonight, which is a State of the City address. And I'm wishing I had teleprompters up here, because this is a lot of information that I'm going to pass on, and I'm excited to do that, looking forward to doing this. So with that, let me begin. Council members, residents, and city staff, I am grateful for the opportunity I have been given this past year to serve as your mayor and for the trust you have placed in me. It has been an exciting year for the city with many changes and accomplishments. And 2019 promises to be even better as we prepare to embrace new opportunities and face ongoing challenges together in the coming months. Fiscal responsibility is the guiding principle of this council and administration, and I'm very pleased to report that based on our independent audit, we were awarded a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. One of the major challenges of 2018 was reconciling how to maintain the level of services our residents expect with an increasingly tight budget. I wholeheartedly believe it's government's responsibility to exhaust every cost-cutting and efficiency-improving method available. We have and will continue to streamline whenever and wherever possible to maximize every dollar we receive. We are also actively striving to increase city revenue through economic development. In April, we hired a new economic development director to continue to grow and diversify the city's tax base. And several projects were completed throughout the year. The redevelopment agency sold the former Fairchild conductor building to Aligned Energy, who repurposed the facility as a data center, part of what you heard this evening. Papa Pita completed an expansion with a new 100,000 square foot facility, and Forest Products moved into the former stock building supply facility. Projects currently underway include the remodel of the former Albertsons on 70th South and Redwood to Lucky Grocery, and the redevelopment of Jordan Landing's Plaza Village, which will bring in new restaurants and retail. I'm always looking for a Texas Roadhouse over there. Never seems to show up. Looking forward to the first part of 2019, At Home will be taking the place of Sears at Jordan Landing, and PayPal will be joining the community at the Aligned Energy facility mentioned earlier. The city is also working with several companies interested in developing large-scale projects in the Pioneer Technology District, as well as other exciting new retail and large companies looking to make West Jordan their home. Economic development staff are also actively pursuing development funding for potential new projects. The city received an $80,000 grant to conduct a station area plan to potentially redevelop the city center property just east of City Hall, across the road over here, across Redwood. And we received a grant from the Economic Development Corporation of Utah to begin Stage 1 certification for a mega site in the Pioneer Technology District. In addition to improving economic development, 2018 brought increased focus on growth, which continues to be steady. As of the end of the year, the city received and approved 395 detached single-family residential building permits, 40 multifamily building permits, and 28 new commercial and industrial building permits for a total construction valuation of $238.1 million. With this new growth, the city now has approximately 34,641 residential dwelling units. We have an average household size of 3.46 people per household, and preliminary numbers in advance of next year's census estimate are close to 114,000 people call West Jordan home. Each of these residents is unique, but we do have common threads that unify us and determine our community values. We are a family-oriented community. Some of us just starting out, and some of us are retired, but many want homes with yards for children to play. We care about the value of what, for most of us, is our biggest investment, our homes. That means we care about maintaining the condition of our neighborhoods and low crime rates. We lead very busy lives, so we want to be able to play and shop near where we live. That means we need more and better local retail and dining options. We work often in other cities, so we need well-maintained roads and transportation systems to get us there and back home quickly and safely. And of course, we want to preserve a clean, safe, beautiful, and sustainable community for future generations. I believe how we achieve these community values will be determined in great part over the next several years. It is becoming increasingly clear that many county and state officials expect and are prepared to pressure cities like ours with undeveloped land to bear the bulk of the burden of satisfying the need for additional housing. I recognize this need and believe not only that we should, but we must be part of the solution. But growth must be wisely planned. We must be supported by concurrent improvements in services and infrastructure, and it must be in keeping with our community values. To ensure these conditions, it is critical that citizens maintain control of local land use and receive the funding and project prioritization necessary for infrastructure and services to keep pace with growth. We have been working closely with nearby cities and facing the same challenge as well as our state representatives to ensure we have a voice at the legislature as these decisions are made. And we are striving to be a team player, to work with, be part of, and when possible, assume leadership roles within those organizations that formulate policy and make project funding and prioritization decisions that will help shape our city's future. The pressure to grow highlights another challenge we are addressing: the condition of our city in terms of both functions and aesthetics. We provide for the demands of growth and keep our city functioning through enormous amounts of behind-the-scenes maintenance, careful ongoing planning, and a continual stream of projects over many years. For many years, the Public Works Department struggled to maintain the city's infrastructure from an inadequate and sometimes unsafe operations building. A major highlight of 2018 was the completion of the new Public Works facility, which has been in use since August. Not all of the functions of the new facility are fully online, and we haven't had a big enough window of time to track the appropriate data just yet. But we are already seeing improved deployment times of snowplows, improved repair times of city vehicles, and we expect to see additional improvements in other functions, measures of efficiency, and responsiveness to residents' needs. Here are just a few of the more significant infrastructure improvements of 2018, as well as a look at what we'll be tackling in 2019. First, streets. A record number of city streets received a facelift in 2018, as paving crews placed over 25,000 tons of asphalt. Repaving streets in the Bagley Industrial Park, the Welby Industrial Park, and many residential neighborhoods ranging from Ochre Shadows to the central part of the city. Second, utility infrastructure. Last summer, we added 3 staff and a TV truck to our Public Works Department. Since then, utility crews have been increasingly proactive in inspecting and maintaining aging infrastructure. It used to take 12 years to inspect all of the city's sewer lines. We can now do it every 6 years. The resulting improved maintenance will help our systems last longer and reduce costly and inconvenient line blockages and breaks. Looking forward, utility crews are currently updating the SCADA system for better water system monitoring and reliability. Third, traffic. This is an ongoing concern for many residents and businesses. Several very impactful projects to improve flow were completed in 2018, and we look forward to carrying that momentum forward into 2019. Looking at north-south travel, flow was vastly improved with the completion of 5600 West from 7800 South to 8600 South, including a new traffic signal at 8200 South. Further impacting north-south travel are the new Bangerter Bridges. The Capital Projects Division coordinated with UDOT for the completion of these at 70th South and 90th South, and they're preparing for another new bridge at 6200 South as well. Coming up, there will be pavement improvements this year to several north-south collector roads, such as 1300 West, 2700 West, and 4800 West. Now, regarding east-west flow, the completion of the work along 70th South greatly improved east-west traffic, which will continue to improve with 2 upcoming projects. There will be a new railroad crossing at 70th South between Airport Road and 4800 West. And most significantly, 7800 South between Airport Road and 40th West will be reconstructed and widened. We're very excited for this change. It will eliminate the confusing road split with New Bingham Highway, improve the capacity of the 7800 South and 40th West intersection, and allow for full continuous east-west transportation there. The condition of the city includes aesthetic as well as function. Considering our character as a family-oriented community, it's no surprise we have more parks per capita than most cities, and parks continue to be at the top of many residents' priority lists. With this in mind, 2018 efforts to maximize what can be accomplished within the parks budget began with projects to improve water efficiency and update the parks master plan. Major parks improvements last year also include a new bathroom, irrigation system, turf, trees, and softball fields at Constitution Park. The new Sunset Cove Park, upgraded scoreboards at the Veterans Memorial Baseball Park, and the addition of a new pocket parks to our inventory. Until the Parks Master Plan is complete, I can tell you of only a few projects coming up this year. You can expect new trail bridges along the Jordan River Trail, and of course the new Wild West Jordan Playground, which will be rebuilt in Veterans Park. And let's not forget the Big Bend Habitat Restoration Project. This collaborative project, which will eventually restore natural resources along the Jordan River and create a 70-acre nature park and wildlife reserve, continues to progress. We received funding for the urban fishery last year, and construction on that will begin this summer at approximately 8600 South. The beauty of this city is determined by more than parks. It is also determined by our ability to enforce property and landscape maintenance codes. To improve this, we created the Community Preservation Department last May to bring together multiple departments tasked with similar goals, such as code enforcement and business licensing, to support our efforts to make the city a better place to live and to do business. As growth continues, it is essential that our public safety teams grow as well. In 2018, our police chief of 6 years, Doug Diamond, retired, and Ken Wallentine was selected as our new chief. In addition, we hired 15 new police officers. The transition of leadership has been well accepted, and this hiring influx has created a lot of opportunity for training and growth within the department. Our officers responded to over 57,000 calls for service last year, and they do a phenomenal job in keeping our city safe through community-based, thoughtful, and innovative effort. Last year brought significant improvements in our fire department as well. City Council approved nine new positions, along with funding for a new ladder truck to enhance public safety as we grow. We also received funding from the state to implement a new, more efficient alerting system that promises to dispatch firefighters sooner, ultimately saving lives. And tonight, we're very excited to welcome our new fire chief, Derek Maxfield, to the team. As you can see, 2019 promises to bring many changes to West Jordan. But the change of our form of government at the outset of 2020 is perhaps the most significant change coming. We will be preparing for this transition throughout the year as we review the entire city code for necessary revisions, restructure key departments, and hold an election for 5 council positions and the city's first ever strong mayor. As we work through these changes and challenges, we remain committed to transparency and community engagement. In 2018, we instituted a cascade of changes to improve openness. These include open Meet the Mayor office hours and live broadcasts of city council meetings on Facebook and YouTube. We also changed the start of council meetings to include workshops that allow open council discussions on issues. And we passed a resolution requiring council wait at least 2 weeks before voting on issues requiring a public hearing so that we have time to fully consider resident input before casting our vote. Last year's public outreach was unprecedented, as well as we actively sought resident input on matters such as trash collection and recycling, the Parks Master Plan, and the Wild West Jordan Playground. Moving forward, we will continue to gather public input, increase city participation on social media, and improve our city website as we strive to always be open and responsive to residents and businesses. Working with City Council has been a great experience for me this year. As the legislative body, this council has worked together very well, making wise choices and taking steps that are sometimes difficult in the short term, but ultimately necessary to improve the city's long-term prospects. Thank you, City Council. Thank you, staff, and thank you, citizens of West Jordan.
And now for the Democratic response. Just kidding.
And now I'm glad that is over. We have two presentations tonight. First one is recognition of Judy Hansen for her service on the Planning Commission, and Bill Heiner and Christopher Chestnut for their service on the Board of Adjustment. Scott Langford. We can do that.
Could I have Judy Hansen, Bill Heiner, and Christopher Chestnut please come up and stand right here? Or right here if you want to be on camera. Just kidding. You're on camera right now. And Christopher, I just saw him. Oh, he had to leave. Okay, well, we'll recognize him. Mayor, Council, citizens of West Jordan, tonight we want to take just a moment and recognize the fine work that these individuals have given to the city. As the mayor has eloquently articulated just now, we live in a very dynamic and rapidly growing community. And part of that growth and change requires a lot of hours behind the scenes through our various boards and commissions. Judy has served on the Planning Commission from January 2016 through December of this past year. During that time, she represented the Planning Commission on the Design Review Committee and also served in the Community Development Block Grant Home Committee meeting as well. Bill Heiner has served 2 terms on the Board of Adjustment and it spans all the way back to 2010, I believe, all the way through the end of this past year. During that time, Bill was elected as vice chair twice, in 2015 and 2018, and was the Board of Adjustment representative on our General Plan Committee. Christopher Chestnut, who unfortunately had to leave, he has also served very well. He served on our Board of Adjustment from January 2016 through December of this past year, serving as vice chair in 2017. Land use is often an enviable task. It's challenging, but it's very necessary. And so please join with me in expressing your gratitude to these fine individuals.
The next item of business is to approve Resolution 19-01, consenting to the appointment of Derek Maxfield as the Fire Chief of the City of West Jordan, and authorizing the mayor to execute an employment agreement and to administer the oath of office. David Bricky.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. It is my pleasure to recommend the hiring of Derek Maxfield as the next fire chief for the city of West Jordan. Chief Maxfield is a third-generation firefighter raised in the state of Utah and someone we're damn lucky to get. So with that recommendation, I know we've got a full night, but I know Chief Maxfield's here with his family, and if we could ask him to come forward, I'd appreciate it.
You have to make a motion here. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I would request that the minutes reflect Mr. Bricky's comments verbatim. Second, I would move to approve Resolution 19-01, appointing Derek Maxfield as the fire chief of the city of West Jordan, authorizing the mayor to execute an employment agreement, and directing that he be administered the oath of office.
Councilmember Burton.
Did you see that order?
Councilmember Whitelock, sorry.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey and a second by Councilmember Whitelock. Discussion to the motion. Seeing Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just point out, if it wasn't evident to those who are in attendance tonight, there's a lot of excitement to bring Chief Maxfield over to the point where I kind of sprinted in front of some folks to hit my button so I can make the motion first, and you saw Councilmember Whitelock reaching to make sure she got the second. So we are thrilled to have him join us. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we have no more discussion, so let's vote.
Mayor Riding,
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey,
Most emphatic, aye.
Councilmember Burton,
Aye.
and Councilmember Jacob.
Yes.
Vote passes 7-0.
Okay, let us go down below and be a part of the swearing in.
If I could ask Chief Maxfield to introduce his lovely wife and family, if they're here.
So I have a lot of family here. I won't introduce everybody, but this is my wife, Jeanette, great supporter, and really appreciate her love and support. And then also my children, Colton, who's 15, and Caleb, if you can raise your hand. He's 11, and Sadie is back in the back there. She's our 7-year-old, about to be 8 tomorrow. She's pretty excited. So, and then just a bunch of fellow coworkers and friends from work, as well as the great men and women of the West Jordan Fire Department. I, Derek J. Maxfield,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah
and the Constitution of the State of Utah
and the laws and ordinances of the City of West Jordan,
and the laws and ordinances of the City of West Jordan,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Absolutely. Bring them up. Can be your Christmas card. Thank you.
I don't have any sheets for people that have signed up.
Mayor, I would propose we take a 5-minute recess while people are adjusting.
All in favor of a 5-minute break? Aye.
I'm just afraid of what time for you to have it come if I do it. Right into the stand.
like to reconvene our city council meeting. We did make an amendment to our agenda, so we're going to move now to citizen comments. And there are two opportunities to speak this evening. If you're here to speak on the public hearing, that's going to be coming up a little bit later. We will open the citizen comments now for those who wish to speak about anything else, including what's on the agenda. So if there, I think he already spoke on the RDA too. Is there anyone that would like to come up and address council regarding any issue for tonight? I talked to her.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
My name is Reed Sharman. I reside at 3363 West Shore Circle, West Jordan, Utah. My wife and I have been residents of West Jordan for 33 years. Since I'm on the clock, I will be blunt. I'm angry. The City of West Jordan, in their Facebook post of December 17th, 2018, is of great concern. By use of an acronym to hide a euphemism, the city is poised to undermine the R1 zoning designation. In that post, a concept that could potentially eliminate R1 zoning, or at least create illegal spot zoning in order to hide the fact the city has failed to enforce the current law, was put forward. The concept of a second home being placed on property as an allowed use within the R1 zoning designation needs to be stopped. The concept is put forward under the guise of ADU, or alternative dwelling unit. It is a term crafted to defeat the laws intended to protect the property owners and residents of the city of West Jordan. If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and floats like a duck, it's a duck. A second house on property is a second house. By its own admission, according to the public Facebook post, those within the city with enforcement responsibility have failed to enforce the law as required by their oath of office, which states they will support, protect, and defend the Constitution and the laws and ordinances of the state of Utah and the city of West Jordan. This needs to be addressed. According to the logic put forward in the Facebook post, the solution to this failure is to change the law. That would be akin to having a problem with vehicle speeding and simply raising the speed limit until no one is in violation. In this case, they propose to change the law so the R1 zone literally means nothing. The Facebook post makes vague references to the number of non-conforming structures and where they are located. Can the city produce a factual list of violators to support its vague position? If it can, then what prohibits enforcement? Who needs to be held accountable? Were the city to attempt to pass an ordinance allowing a second or third dwelling to be built on property in a single dwelling zoning district, then what is the point of zoning at all? If zoning means nothing, then perhaps it's time to abandon all zoning in the city. What you are required to do is to follow a planning process that includes master, general, and specific plans, and to follow the laws that have been laid out to promote health, safety, and welfare. These include the enforcement of state-adopted building and fire codes. I recommended that you follow the oath you swore to uphold and take action accordingly. I believe that by taking a regulatory action that effectively removes R1 zoning, you will devalue property in West Jordan. You will, in fact, devalue my property, and you will reduce the quality of life for myself and my neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Seeing none, I will close the citizen comments, and I will suspend our city council meeting and move back to the workshop. And we'll go back to workshop item 2B, is where we were, Corbin, when we moved on And I've got Councilmember McConaughey up, so Councilmember McConaughey, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So where we left off, conversation here, it was the use of the different city buildings and different city facilities by the, I can't remember the name, the group formerly known as the Arts
501c3.
Council. Yes. Yes, by them. Anyway, you had brought up some concerns about Pioneer Hall. I want to echo those concerns about the facility as it is an aging facility. And as staff is wanting to look into a contract with them to kind of say, you have approval to use these different places, I would suggest Pioneer Hall at this point in time should be excluded. I think we need to revisit the use of it in general and find some sort of a mechanism for determining the impactfulness of the use and make sure it's only minimal uses that are permitted there. And until we have something to help ensure the integrity of the building and preserve it, they don't make them like that anymore, and it's irreplaceable. So I would prefer that particular building be excluded from any contract with the organization.
Okay, let me ask a question for Corbin. Corbin, following the discussion that we have here, is it the intent to come back to City Council with the resolution regarding the agreement with the West Jordan Arts Council?
Correct. What I'm looking for is kind of a majority, not kind of, a majority of the council pointing a direction. For example, Pioneer Hall, do you want that or do you not want to allow that? City Hall use of the community room, do you want to allow that, not allow it, allow it in certain circumstances? And then we'll draft the lease agreement or the facility use agreement with that direction and bring that back for approval.
Well, right now, I think there are at least two. Is there anyone else not in favor of using Pioneer Hall?
Repeat the way you worded the question, I'm not sure how to answer that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not in favor of
Is there anybody else that's in favor of not using Pioneer Hall? Anyone else that?
Oh, look at that, we can do it now. Yes, I'm in favor of not using Pioneer Hall.
And I'm okay because I feel it's a short period of time, and I don't know how often they can use other venues, and I would hate to see that they can't put on a production because we say you can't use that facility. So I understand that it's a building that we want to be careful with. I don't feel like we have very many historical buildings in our city, so I certainly don't want it to be destroyed. But I attended a production there that they put on, and I didn't feel like what they were doing was going to harm the building. I feel like dancing with tap shoes on is more harmful to the building than what I saw, the production that I saw there. So where it's a limited amount of time, I'm okay with it. I'm also okay with them using this building. I like the arts. I want to do what we can to help continue that in our community.
Okay, this is, again, we're in the workshops, so it's kind of an open discussion, so just jump in at this point.
I'm jumping in. I'm in favor of them using the building and the Pioneer Hall and others. It's a community building. This is a community organization. I think we need to make sure they care for it. And what I've seen when I've gone to their productions there and other times, they appear to be caring for it. But if we want to put some other things in there and not separate them specifically, but make it general across the board for the way the building is used. I mean, it's open for wedding receptions and other parties and events. And I think those should also follow the guidelines to care for that building, because that building needs care for it. I also want to add, they've been using the short gallery sometimes, and I'm okay with them using the short gallery, but I've noticed that sometimes when it's used, the doors are left unlocked before and sometimes after, and we've got some valuable art in there. So I think maybe something.
I'll make sure we cover stuff like that. Before
covered
you
there.
wander off Pioneer Hall, I want to make sure I got a sense on that, and then we'll come back to City Hall if that's okay. I'm seeing 3 not in favor of using it.
I'm in favor
And
of
a lot
allowing
of-
them to use it. Like Councilmember Whitelock said, we have a year, cross my fingers, until we have a new facility for them to use, if everything goes through. And I don't think they'll destroy it between now and next January. So I'm with Councilmember Whitelock and Councilmember Burton that I feel okay if they use it for the next year. And then we can put some restrictions on it next year.
Okay,
You're looking at me.
that's, well,
So,
Who's looking at you?
my recollection of the 2 years I've been on the council is we had talked about the Pioneer Hall when we had the tap shoe folks here and some of the concerns, and I think Justin or somebody from Parks maybe had suggested that there might be some concerns on the use. So for me, I'm pretty open to letting them use any of the buildings because it is a short-term thing. The next item we're going to talk about is the cultural arts building that we intend to build. But I do have some reservations based on this council's discussion previously at the beginning of the year on some concerns about the structural integrity of Pioneer Hall. So I would probably lean towards not, but maybe there's a middle ground, that in the lease, 1 or 2 performances a year in case one of the other venues is not available, so it's kind of a plan B, and limit the number of use for the period of 1 year. So I'm going to be more in line with the mayor and Councilmember McConaughey, but I think if it was a plan B that the West Jordan Middle School wasn't available or Viridian wasn't available and they needed to put on a performance, that we would allow them to do that at Pioneer Hall as kind of a backup. That would be.
So are you suggesting don't put it in the contract, but we're open to them if they come to us to ask? For a specific purpose.
That's what so my recommendation, if the council is in agreement, is not use Pioneer Hall. I do think it has, based on discussions this council has had previously, but if there is a place where they don't have a venue to perform due to City Hall being used, Viridian being used, that we have a plan B.
Are they currently overusing it? I mean, as far as I know, they're not using it every month.
the current use is, what I understand from Vic, is twice a year, and each time when they do use it, it's about 4 weeks of use.
They're
For
just one
each
entity.
event.
They're just one entity.
And
that
that's,
uses it.
yeah.
I mean,
But are we going to continue to allow the Pioneer dancers who aren't necessarily West Jordan resident? I struggle with that. If we're gonna continue to allow them, what's the harm in letting our arts have it for, we could cap it at 2, if that's typically what they use. Could we cap it at 2,
No,
Ellen?
one of the things I want to clarify is our facilities that are open for public rental, this is a public entity, and they could rent the facility and pay public prices and use it the way other third parties do. This is more of a discussion about a facility use agreement with them specifically, where we're either giving them a discounted rate or no charge at all. So that's a little bit of a distinction between
Same as the dancing group,
parties.
Corbin. Same as
Yeah.
the dancing group. We're giving them a significant discount.
Okay.
Well, and the other thing too is that with the West Jordan Middle School opening up in the fall, that puts that theater available in the fall. So it wouldn't be a year.
That would be a much better venue that choose
Oh,
that.
And
over
that's
if
not
they
their
could get
first
it.
choice to use that Pioneer Hall anyway. They would prefer other locations. I think they just do that because they don't have other locations.
But it sounds to me like you've got enough that say to use it, but on a very as limited as possible.
Yep, that's what I'm hearing too. Okay, if we can, let's talk about City Hall and specifically just the uses of the Shore Gallery and the community room. What are your feelings about those 2 rooms specifically?
I'm okay. Go ahead.
I'm fine.
I'm fine with both those rooms. I'm just concerned about the proper lockup before and after, like in the Shore Gallery, because of the valuables that are in there. But
do they need to use the Shore Gallery? Is it something?
again, that's not their first choice.
It's their visual.
Use that
That's
when-
the last
Aren't they
choice.
responsible for hanging the art in the Shore Gallery? Isn't that a visual arts thing that is the
I think we're
Art
talking about
Society?
practicing in there.
They're different than the 501c3 group though, I think.
Is that different? No, I don't
They're all
think it
the same.
is. That's
No,
the
I
same people.
believe all of them
they're all the same.
went with the group.
Yeah, I guess what I would interject there is that as part of the language in the agreement is that they are responsible for every person that comes into the building and to make sure that they're taking care of the building, whatever, however you want to say that. But as long as we don't have a lot of kids running around unsupervised, which has happened.
Yeah, correct. I think that's good advice.
So for me, this raises the question, though, that has come up several times as we've talked about waiver of fees for different groups that have come before us, asking for fee waivers for the park, for fee waivers for other facilities, Pioneer Hall, this building, whatever, this is now, pardon the expression, but just a 501c3 that the city has nothing to do with. So what door does this open, legally speaking, precedent speaking, for other 501c3s to come in here and go, well, you gave it to the arts facility. Now we got the Red Cross coming in here saying, well, we want to use your community room too. Let's put a use agreement in place for us to use.
Yeah, hence the need for a use agreement to specify this is our relationship with this particular 501c3 by contract. And further, this is a 501c3 that you have chosen to give a grant to actually appropriate funds specifically toward. That's a little bit of a distinguishing factor from the other 501c3s that come and ask for fee waivers. And so that's an area where we can make a distinction.
Sure, but I mean, I brought this up when we talked about that grant, right? Can any 501c3 come up and ask us for a grant? Any 501, the Red Cross could come up and ask us for a grant for whatever reason, and we could decide whether or not to give them a grant. So that's what I'm saying, is that by separating this group from the city proper, that puts them in a bucket with a lot of other groups. And so I'm wondering what precedent we're setting, what are we opening ourselves up to? Can another group come to us now and say, why did you do a special agreement with that group and you won't do a special agreement with me?
So the conversations that I had, I'm trying to remember when this was, because I think the conversation's been going on the entire time I've been on the council. As the arts group as the arts groups have worked to become independent. And the thought process is that by breaking them off separate, they're able to be a lot more autonomous, they're able to do a lot more. And then we still maintain the connection because basically we are looking for